So we are talking about the horror film Werewolf, The Beast Among Us. This one directed by Louis Monroe and was actually released back in 2012. And this movie stars Ed Quinn, Stephen Rea and Stephen Bauer. The story here is in an Eastern European town that has been plagued by a series of werewolf killings, and they hire a motley crew of werewolf hunters to try and defend the village and kill this vicious beast. Unbeknownst to them, this beast is not like any other werewolf. It's actually a kind of special breed, for the reasons that you'll know through the film, and is that much more dangerous, smarter, quicker, and has other abilities as well. So, let's talk a little bit about Werewolf, A Beast Among Us. So the first thing you're going to notice here is the production value, I would say. This was around a $5 million budget, so it's not a kind of mega cheap film. And it really does show in some of the production design and the production values here. First thing is the set design, I've got to say, is great. And this is a mix of, because it was filmed in Romania, it really does benefit from some fantastic exterior shots showing all these kind of like old worldy buildings and castles and ruins and things like that. So it looks fantastic. It has this great kind of rustic feel to it and feels very authentic, and this kind of like this lore, this kind of this mythology of kind of like werewolves and vampires and things like that that come from that region. But the added thing as well, it does have this kind of level of production, like, you know, there is so much set dressing on display. For example, when we go into these villages and we just see piles and piles of like bodies, and they're all kind of like messed up with guts hanging out, obviously all kind of obviously latex and stuff, but it looks really good. And we kind of go through these bunch of werewolf hunters, and they've got this kind of like cool armory of like different kind of weapons and stuff like that. So the production value here, both in kind of like the sets and the kind of location down to the kind of the actual props, really, really good. Cast is pretty good as well. Some recognisable names here. Stephen Rea, I suppose, is probably the most recognisable actor here, but there's plenty of faces you're going to recognise from a variety of TV shows. The weird thing for me is it's kind of a mishmash of influences here and aesthetics, because it's obviously set in kind of a Eastern European city or town, but everyone speaks English. Some of them are speaking with an English accent, some are speaking with an American accent, some are speaking with a kind of Eastern European accent, but they're all speaking English. There's a mishmash of kind of time periods as well. It's in an unspecified period of time, but there is a definite kind of steampunk feel to it. We have this kind of like female werewolf hunter that's got a flamethrower and kind of clearly kind of like modern style goggles and stuff like that. But it also has influences from the westerns as well, like American westerns, where we have almost like a gunslinger aesthetic to some of the hunters as well. So it's a weird kind of mishmash of times and kind of influences that gives it a somewhat weird feel to it. So I have to say, if you are wanting a period piece and it to be quite authentic, you won't find it here. It does remind me very much of the Hugh Jackman film Van Helsing that came out in 2002, I believe it was. Has a very similar kind of feel to that, although that was probably even, dare I say it, more authentic to the time. But it's not really, that's more of just a stylistic choice rather than a critique. So what works with this film, other than the kind of the set design and all that? I've got to say there's a good amount of action in this film. The set pieces are quite thrilling, and I did like the kind of the cat and mouse game where we kind of it's revealed the werewolf and kind of the motivations behind it. There's some kind of like other reveals that happen and throughout the movie, that some of which work, some of which don't. There's a high body count on this film, and they don't really skimp out on the gore here. I was surprised at how gory this film actually can be at some point. I mean, it's not, I would say, particularly realistic gore, but nonetheless it is fairly gory at any point. On the negative side here, some of the CGI effects are on the weaker side, especially the transformation sequence is actually quite poor. When we see the werewolf kind of darting around in the dark, I think it's forgivable level of CGI, but the transformation scenes are a little bit on the rough side. There is a reveal that happens, and I might say what it is, to one of the hunters that comes out of nowhere and doesn't make sense when you think about what has happened in the rest of the film. So something happens and there's a reveal, thinking, hang on a second, that doesn't make sense, because I saw him in this particular setting a while ago. Maybe I've given it away. But anyway, it's just a little bit of a strange thing that just seems to come out of nowhere. And this character's infatuation with a female character sort of, again, comes out of nowhere. You think, what, how has this happened? I mean, it just seems to come out of nowhere. So the writing for me in certain scenes, it's a little bit sloppy. And there's some things that don't really make sense. And it gets a little bit convoluted sometimes. But I've got to say, I actually quite enjoyed this film. If you're a werewolf fan, and it's kind of like, it also sort of points to, as you can tell by the beast among us, who's really the beast? Are there kind of like the overtly beasts, like the kind of the werewolf, or is there a beast in every one of us? Ponder that question. Deep questions, but it's not actually that much of a deep film. Don't kid yourself. But it's a fun action horror film with kind of plenty of gore, exciting action sequences, and great set dressings and kind of locations. I'll give this film a solid 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.